Welcome to Everyday Moodlings. I'm your host, Drury Parks, and in this episode we are going to explore letter embossing folders or text embossing folders. We're also, if you're following along, we do challenges every week. So this week it was embossing folder, letter or text embossing folders, or stencils. All month long in November we have been looking at the various alphabet or letter options. So we started out with stickers. Last week we talked about stamps. This week we're going to be doing a thank you card using a text embossing folder. Now in the blog post, and if you're watching this on YouTube or on the newsletter, there's a link to the blog post. There are some step-by-step instructions with photos for you there. The one that I use for the step-by-step instructions is actually blue and yellow, but for this one, since we're so close to Christmas, I wanted to go ahead and do a Christmas thank you card. So, and we're doing a double embossing here. We're going to do some embossing with heat embossing as well as our embossing folders. So what else am I using? I opted to cut it out with a die cut, so this is just labels. I think this is like one of the early ones, like 1, 2, 3 die from Spellbinders, as well as a banner die for sentiment. I have some ribbon, 2 things of ink. We're going to use this one, this green one, for coloring, and then I have Stays On for my sentiment. Now, to create your die cut, you're going to want to run it through the label die cut first and then through the embossing folder. If you do it the other way around, you will lose some of your embossing, quite a bit of your embossing actually, from the embossing folder. Now at this point, and this one just perfectly fits on my base card, at this point we want to go ahead and do some heat embossing on it. Now to do this, we're going to actually add some embossing ink to the top, to the raised areas. Now try as hard as you might here, you will not get it to only adhere to the raised area. It's just too hard. But I think that kind of adds to the look. So what we're doing really here is a resist, so that we can go back and add some color to the flat area rather than what you would usually do, which is to add color to the embossed area. We want to do a little bit of a resist. So I'm just using distressed embossing ink. I like this one. You can see I've really messed up my pad there. Before we begin, I am using ultra thick embossing enamel. You can use just regular clear embossing powder. This one gives you a little bit more thick of a coat. I am using a tray, and I'm actually going to pour it into the tray, because instead of spreading it or pouring it on top, I'm actually going to press my piece into it to pick up the embossing powder. Or enamel. I just found that that works easier. Let's set that off to the side a little bit. I'm not really looking for perfect coverage here. I am looking more for something that's a little less uniform, and because that'll give it a nice, interesting look. Give it a little bit more texture. Now I'm going to go ahead and press it down into my embossing enamel. Now if you got an area where nothing's sticking to it, you can go back and add in This might be why my pad looks the way it does, because I'm pretty tough on it. I just go back and I'm going to add in a little bit more. So I think it's about time for me to re-ink my embossing ink. A little bit more right here in the center. Now if you get a big glob, you can just go back and kind of lift that off a little bit with a paintbrush. Okay, it's not sticking as well as I would like, and that is probably because I need to re-ink this. But I am resourceful. Okay, now I need to go ahead and heat set this. Okay, so I got it all set, and when we put obviously the color on it, you're going to really see the image come to life. It almost has kind of a dewdroppy look to it, like almost like it kind of rained on your thank you card. So just an interesting option to add in some additional texture or interest to your work. I'm using a chalk ink. You could use a dye ink. Well, actually, chalk ink is still a water-based ink, but I really love how it blends. Now when we get done here, I'll go back and wipe it off of the embossing enamel. I really like the embossing enamel because it's such a thick embossing option. It's unlike anything else out there. So if you've never used it before, give it a try. And I am using a color book stylist to style or to add the ink to my favorite inking tool. I have all the Tim Holtz ones. I just don't like them as much. This one feels more comfortable in my hand. Okay, so now you can see where I kind of removed it. And I think I may go back and a little bit extra to the edges. Actually, I can do it right from the ink pad. So there you go. It gives you really kind of an imperfect resist look. So that's how I use an embossing folder with heat embossing. I'm sure there are people who do it other ways, but I just find this a fun random. I like random things. I like something that doesn't look uniform, and so this is a really cool look to me. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my last pieces, and I'll be right back. Oh, we have to create our sentiment. hard getting those darn rhinestones on there. It's not as easy as it looks, right? So if you have any questions about anything I did here, please be sure to let me know. Like I said, you can also see step-by-step photos on the blog. This will be our last video before the Thanksgiving break, so we're going to take Thanksgiving off and we'll be back next week. Until then, I'm your host, Jeree Parks with Everyday Moodlings.